topic today is heat pumps, the new incentives from Mass Save, which is very exciting. And while everyone's coming in, let me just briefly introduce you to Green Energy Consumers Alliance. We are celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. We started in 1982 as an oil buyers group, going to the oil dealers and saying, we've got a group of people and they'll all come to you if you offer them a discount on your price. And we still offer that service. But since then, we've grown a great deal and we've expanded to include wind power, connecting consumers to wind power generators, like the nuns in Rentham who wanted to put up a wind turbine and needed funding. And we said, we'll sign a contract with you to buy 10 years worth of your RECs, your renewable energy certificates. And then we'll find people like you and me who care about climate to purchase a share of those and help fund your project in that way. So we've done that for many years. We've connected people to trusted sources for solar power. We've connected people to discounts for electric vehicles. Everything we do is about using consumer power to drive the transition to renewable power. And we have a really strong advocacy program where we're a recognized authority on consumer energy issues in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So our agenda for today, first we're going to start with just some introductions as we've been doing, and some ground setting on some level setting on what is a heat pump, and then we'll jump into the new incentives in Massachusetts, and then focus on what are the conditions that make a heat pump most cost effective, because that's what a lot of us want to know. Is does it make sense for our from our house to switch to a heat pump now? Should we wait, etc.? And then how to get the information you need, and we'll have a good 30 minutes for your questions at the end. So about heat pumps, these are an electric source of heat. They can be used. They can use ductwork, or they can provide heat without any duct work in your house. So ducted or ductless. The illustration that we have here is a ductless mini split. Split because there's one part outside and one part inside. They can be whole home or partial home. So you can completely get rid of your fossil fuel system and have only a heat pump providing your heat. They are that efficient. So that you can rely on them, or you can augment your current fossil fuel system with a heat pump, lessening the amount of fossil fuels that you use, but still using a heat pump for a good portion of your heating and cooling. The heat that's being transferred into your house can be transferred from the air outside your house or from the ground. The refrigerant tubes can go through the ground. They can even go through water. But generally, we're talking about air source heat pumps in this presentation. And you may have heard, oh, they're not efficient enough to provide heat in New England. If you're hearing that, somebody has old information. It used to be that there were only heat pumps for moderate temperature climates, but now there are cold climate heat pumps that are very efficient down to very cold temperatures, -15, and it is still working efficiently, -15 Fahrenheit, and it's still working efficiently. And because it runs on electricity, it can be a carbon-free source of heat, and this is virtually the only heating system that can be carbon-free, unless you're supplying your heat on with your own woodlot and you are replacing as many trees as you cut down, and even that some would wonder because the trees take too long to grow. So just to get a sense of what we're talking about. And now the exciting news is that we are launching a heat pump program in 2022. Green Energy Consumers is. Our goal with this program is to make it easier for energy consumers to find trusted vendors and get sound advice about the quotes from those vendors. This will be independent quote comparison from our partner, independent system design consultations from our partner, and general advice, and a network of trusted heat pump installers. We don't have that list yet ready at this point, but it will be ready later this spring. And our partner is Abode Energy Management. Mike Simons is with us from Abode, and he'll introduce himself in a moment. But basically, Abode oversees the home performance contractors in Mass Save. They are building science focused, and they run heat pump programs for 9 municipal power companies. So they really have a lot of experience in being able to connect consumers to trusted vendors. And you'll be able to use our landing page for access to the referrals, the consultations, and the quote comparisons. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Simons. I'm with Abode. Yeah, so more or less for the last 10 years, or 11 years, my professional life has all been about Mass Save, running energy audits, training energy advisors. But really the last 3 years has been all about learning about heat pumps, do's and don'ts as far as best practices. And I've been running the consultations for the last 2 years. I can say for my own home, I have a 100-year-old home in Central Mass. I installed 6 mini splits this past summer. This past winter, I didn't turn on my steam boiler one time for heat. So I can say that, even during blizzards, even during single digits, this equipment works if it's sized appropriately. And there are certainly strategies that can take place to make this equipment more affordable than I think what a lot of contractors are kind of first presenting with some of their solutions. So totally happy with to try and work with anyone in this organization to try and find a project to meet their goals.
Great, thank you, Mike. Now, getting into the heat pump incentives from Mass Save. These are new this year, and there are 2 things that are particularly exciting about these new incentives. The first is a whole home incentive. Now, what do we mean by whole home? We mean that this would be your exclusive heating system, the heat pump. It would be designed to produce 100% of the heat that you would need. And you would sign you wouldn't necessarily have to remove your existing fossil fuel system, but you would need to sign an affidavit saying that you are not intending to operate it. So the exciting thing about the $10,000 incentive is that it applies, it is regardless of system size. So if you have a small house, you can still get that $10,000 rebate, and that means that a larger percentage of the total cost is going to be covered by that rebate, which is particularly useful because small homes used to, if you're just getting a small heat pump, you would get a relatively small rebate. The other exciting thing about the new incentive is that gas heated homes are now included. It used to be that gas heated homes would qualify only for a small cooling and efficient cooling incentive, which really didn't go very far in terms of buying certainly a whole home system or even a partial home system. So gas heated homes are now eligible for the whole home rebate. And if you go to the Mass Save website, you'll see a chart similar to the one that I'm showing here. Now, the whole home rebate, by the way, would apply to every unit in a home. So if you had a duplex, and both sides of the duplex had a fossil fuel system, both would qualify for that $10,000 to remove that or displace the use of that fossil fuel system in each of the units. So that's a great thing as well. Now, you can also maintain your fossil fuel system as a backup and use a heat pump for part of your house. Um, for instance, if you have a great room where your living room, dining room, and kitchen, say, are all open to each other, you could put a heat pump there and have the core of the house where you spend most of your day heated by that heat pump, but still have the fossil fuel backup to heat the periphery of the house, the bedrooms, etc. Um, and that rebate is up to $10,000, but it is based on the size of the system. And that size is measured in tons of heating capacity. The size of the rebate is, or the incentive is $1,250 per ton. And uh, uh, the amount of capacity that you need would be measured by the installation company. They would come and do a heat load assessment in your home, and many homes might be able to be heated with 3 to 5 tons of heating capacity, and so that rebate would be in the 3,000 to 6,000 range, roughly. And these, again, are all just ballpark numbers. You'll need to have somebody come into your home to make those assessments. If you are going to have a partial heat pump system, you will need to have an integrated control in order to qualify for the Mass Save rebates. An integrated control is a thermostat that connects both your heat pump and your fossil fuel backup system. And it seamlessly toggles between the two systems at a set switchover point. Um, I believe the switchover point for gas heated homes and oil heated homes is 30 degrees Fahrenheit. And for propane heated homes, it is 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And so that's programmed into the integrated controls. And when the temperature hits that point, seamlessly, your fossil fuel system will turn on and your heat pump will turn off. And the integrated controls are incentivized as well. So it's a great thing, and it does make it possible to have a a hybrid system where you have the heat pumps and the fossil fuel systems. Mass Save is also incentivizing ground source heat pumps. These are also called geothermal systems. The incentive is potentially higher for a geothermal system, and that's because the installation costs are more expensive. These are more efficient than air source heat pumps. So if you do have open space on your property, then that's definitely a great thing to consider. Um, there is another technology. It's called an air-to-water heat pump, also called a hydronic heat pump. And this takes heat out of the air, or I suppose it could be a geothermal as well. And it puts the heat into a water system that then could be pumped through your home. This is most applicable for radiant flooring. So if you currently have radiant flooring, that's heated with a fossil fuel system, you could consider exploring an air-to-water heat pump system. Unfortunately, there are very few experienced installers in hydronic heat pumps in New England, and that is why it's a very expensive proposition for any other type of hydronic heating. There's no plug and play. If you have um, a hot water baseboard or steam radiators, all of those things are not really plug and play with heat pumps at this point. Um, there is an incentive, um, but as I said, there are so few experienced installers that it is a very expensive proposition at this point. Now, that said, it doesn't mean if you have a hydronic system, it doesn't mean that you can't have a heat pump. It's just that you can't use your hydronic distribution system to spread the heat through your home. You would have to use either ductwork or use the ductless heat pumps to heat your home instead of the baseboard or the radiators that you're used to. There are also heat pump water heaters. These are 2 to 3 times more efficient than electric resistance tanks. So if you have an electric tank, um, definitely when you next um, are replacing that, you want to look at a heat pump water heater option. These do need adequate space for air exchange, so you can't put them in a closet or some a small space like that. And because it's electrical, it needs its own wiring. If you don't currently have an electric tank, you may need to put in a new circuit for it. And it does need a condensate drain. So if you have an older type of um, water heater that doesn't have a condensate drain, you would need to put in that as well. And it does make the space around it colder and drier because it is pulling the heat out of the air that's around it. So if you had a finished basement, for instance, and you were heating a space right on the other side of the wall from your water heater, you would need to put in insulation between those two spaces because otherwise the heat pump water heater would be robbing the heat from the conditioned space in your basement. There have been federal tax credits up to $300 for mini splits as recently as last year. But whether that's still in effect for this year, you would need to consult with a tax professional. And for the geothermals, there's a very significant tax credit. So if you have the space for a geothermal system, then that's something you might consider, and you could build that tax credit into the cost of doing it. But first, you want to check with a tax professional to make sure that that it's still applicable in this year. I'm not a tax professional, so can't vouch for that. And now a little bit about what types of homes are most cost effective for installing a heat pump. First is, what type of fuel do you currently burn for your heating? If you have propane or electric resistance or heating oil, those are all pretty likely to be a good bet for cost effectiveness, especially with this year's prices being so high. But even looking at an average of the last 5 years, those are all pretty likely. Certainly, if you have electric resistance heat, if you have electric baseboard, then a heat pump will save you money because it's going to be much more efficient than the electric baseboard. It's virtually roughly 3 times more efficient. electric resistance. So it's definitely a good thing to think about if you have electric resistance. Now, if you do have natural gas as your heating fuel, this is the least likely to be cost effective. But even there, I see that someone has muted me. Let's see. I think I'm unmuted. Um, uh, Even there with gas prices being so high this winter, you do want to get a cost comparison to see if a heat pump would be cost effective for you. And certainly, if you have solar panels, if you own those solar panels and are not leasing them, then it's very likely that the solar panels would make your heat pump cost effective with your gas heat, because the cost of your electricity is built into the cost of those solar panels, and would likely make your heat pump cost effective. Now, also, if you have gas heat and you have an existing older air conditioning system, a central air conditioning system, when that system needs to be replaced, um, it's definitely worth considering a heat pump at that time, if not before, for two reasons. One, the ductwork um, might be able to be used by the heat pump, so no expense in terms of that. A relatively simple installation cost with central AC ductwork already existing in the home. And also, a heat pump provides heating and cooling in the same system. So replacing, if you need to have central AC, replacing either the AC or your current fossil fuel heating system with a heat pump means that you won't have to replace the other. You're getting two for the price of one. So that's definitely a good thing. And a heat pump is going to be 2 to 3 times more efficient than conventional cooling systems. So there's definitely a savings to be had in replacing your air conditioning. Now, the least expensive installation condition is when you have a furnace instead of a boiler. Just to clarify, a furnace provides hot air and a boiler provides hot water. So if you have a furnace, you have hot air ductwork. And having that ductwork means that you can relatively easily install a heat pump that could use that ductwork in a whole home situation. Also, the heat pump could be used to just augment the furnace in part of the home, again, tapping into the ductwork in part. You do need to make sure that the condensate associated with the heat pump is addressed. Sometimes if you're reusing ductwork, that can be a problem. The condensate itself can be a problem. And of course, the ductwork has to be in good condition, and it has to be accessible to the installation workers. So if all your ductwork was in the walls, it's possible that there would be a problem there. And the reason, again, that we say a furnace is a better candidate for replacement than a boiler is that heat pumps do not produce hot enough water to easily replace boilers. Your boiler, is bringing water up to a very high temperature, and a heat pump is just never going to get to that temperature. So there's not as I said, a plug and play option for swapping out the one for the other. Now, if your home does lack ductwork, which many of our homes do, you can still convert to a heat pump system, either a ducted or in some cases a mini ducted system. Um, Again, a single head could serve a head as the indoor air handler part of the heat pump system. A single head could serve a large open area. You can have single zones or multi zones. Um, uh, you know, heads that are connected or heads that are separate. And you can have a mini ducted head serving a few adjacent small rooms. Say you had 3 small bedrooms on an upper floor with an open attic above. You could relatively easily have a heat pump head in the attic with very small ductworks connecting those uh, bedrooms unserved by the single head. And I just wanted to point out this is a floor mounted heat pump. So we often talk about the mini split heat pumps being the um, horizontal box that is head height or above, um, mounted on a wall. But you can also have floor mounted um, air handlers, and you can have ceiling mounted heads. So it is a very uh, variable design options. In all cases, you will need space outside for the condenser. So if you have your home that goes right up against the property line, there might be a problem there. Or if it's a tight urban lot, you might have trouble finding a place for the condenser. And you also need to protect the condenser from the snow. It can't sit right on the ground, um, uh, because if it gets covered with snow, then there's not going to be enough airflow to be able to do the heat exchange that it's doing. So, how to find the information that you need to make a decision? You definitely want to look at the uh, energy efficiency program that applies to your home. If it's Mass Save or one of the municipal electricity providers, um, these are two consortiums supplying energy efficiency programs to the municipal power um, companies. And also in Rhode Island, there's EnergyWise Rhode Island, also referred to as Rise Engineering or simply National Grid. And there is a program in Rhode Island as well. Their incentives are not as good as Massachusetts at this point, but there are incentives there nonetheless. And our heat pump program, uh, the URL ends with Abode, which again is our partner, ABODE, so greenenergyconsumers.org/Abode. And the access to the online portal to find trusted heat pump installers is going to be free. Again, that'll be starting up later this spring. The independent quote comparison, we have negotiated a discount on the services that Abode usually charges for the fee that Abode usually charges for this service. So it's only $50 for people who come in through our program. And they can also do the hour-long consultations, which is really so valuable if you're thinking about spending thousands of dollars on a relatively new technology. It's great to be able to talk to somebody about that. And again, we have a discounted fee for that consultation of $100. So we're really pleased to be launching this and pleased to be working with Abode. So just in closing, if you like this webinar, we do have webinars all the time. There are 2 in the coming week. Race to Decarbonizing Massachusetts, and is a used electric car right for you? You can always find our events at greenenergyconsumers.org/events, and you can find our recorded webinars on YouTube at youtube.com /Mass Energy /1982. Mass Energy, as many of you know, was our name for many years until we rebranded ourselves Green Energy. And we do invite you to donate. This month, we have a very generous donor who's going to match up to $20,000 worth of donations. So we encourage you to give now if you can. Again, donations are what support our very strong advocacy program and allows us to expand our Drive Green program, our Green Municipal Aggregation program, which is bringing green electricity for everyone in lots of municipalities around the region. So we hope you'll consider that if you have a chance to support our nonprofit mission. And now we'll take questions. Larry is going to read those, and Mike is going to answer them, or I can help with answering them as need be. Larry, will you read us a question?
Loie, first of all, I want to thank you for putting so much effort into learning about heat pumps so that you can provide value to people who come to us for information. We all appreciate your work and for pulling together the program that Abode and Mike Simons are going to be part of. Some of these questions are going to be maybe for Loie, but probably for Mike. So gear up. First of all, I want to address something I do know about, which is that there have been some comments in the chat about whether or not heat pumps reduce greenhouse gas emissions relative to natural gas. And for the record, our organization absolutely says that's true. That is the science that is established by the US EPA, the US Department of Energy, the Massachusetts Office of Environmental Affairs. Every pathway towards reducing carbon emissions in the United States and Massachusetts has heat pumps in the mix. And according to the Massachusetts Clean Energy and Climate Plan, we need about 1 million heat pumps by 2030 to get to the state's requirement of 50% carbon reduction by 2030. In a given home, it reduces your carbon footprint by about 2/3. That's if you have electricity that would normally come from, say, National Grid or Eversource. And the electricity is getting cleaner every year because of state requirements, the renewable portfolio standard. So if you have a heat pump today, it's even going to be more beneficial 10 years from now when the electricity mix is cleaner. But as already been said in the chat, a lot of people are buying 100% green electricity coming from wind and solar. They can have zero emission home heating, just like they can have a zero emission car. And the best mix of all is when you have solar panels on your roof and you can manage it that way. So I just want to put that issue aside and now get into the technical issues of how one can put heat pumps on your home if possible. So let's see, question, Mike. Someone asked, just how about hot water? It's great to have heat pumps for space heat, but how about just to reduce the hot water load in a home?
Yeah, well, Loie talked about it. So there's a few different solutions. So standalone package heat pump hot water heater that is kind of stealing energy from the basement, transferring that into the domestic hot water and spitting out cool, which for half of the year is unfavorable, but dry for most homes is wildly favorable all year into the basement. Do you know that the air to water heat pumps that the marketplace isn't yet developed fully for in our particular market, though the technology is, that can also be used for domestic hot water as well. So if like space for stealing heat from the basement is extremely unfavorable, you could be working with a plumber to be pursuing a standard air to water split system, and that could be a solution. Or the other carbon-free solution that often gets overlooked is solar thermal, or solar domestic hot water. So a handful of options there.
Thank you, Mike. And I do know that in the Mass Save program, they consider heat pump water heaters to be highly cost effective in most cases, especially if you have oil or electric resistance for the hot water. common question, if what's really driving 2022 is the Mass Save rebates are going to be so generous. Again, what's your knowledge about the requirement of getting an energy assessment before going ahead with the heat pump install? Do you know if that's a requirement?
Yeah, so not only is it a requirement, but if there is any weatherization or insulation and air sealing measures that the energy specialist makes, those are going to need to be executed on as part of the project to receive the $10,000 rebate. The good news with the Mass Save program, if people are unfamiliar, air sealing work is 100% subsidized and installation work is subsidized by 75% of the cost. The Mass Save program's picking up the tab on that. You're responsible for 25%, but there's no cap to that amount. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that for moderate income residents as well as renters, the incentive does jump up to 90% or 100% of the cost.
And some people may have had a Mass Save assessment recently, though, that probably would qualify, and they'll probably accept a date of something fairly recent, right?
Yeah, as long as if you had an audit recently and on the like heat loan form, they check the box that says like no weatherization measures, then there's not going to be any hiccups moving through the rebate process.
Okay. On the whole house rebate, which they're really trying to dangle $10,000 in front of people. What about people who have a home that's partially heated by heat pumps and they want to make it entirely heated by heat pumps? Do you know how the rebate and incentives would work for that?
Yeah, I think that with how the program's designed, if there's already cold climate heat pumps that are being actively used, that would be outside of the scope of the $10,000 rebate. However, that $1,250 per ton may be eligible in that case. So yeah, I would certainly before assuming that you would be getting the rebate, I would just be sending over the proposal to like hvac@masssave.com and just making sure that you are going to be entitled to what you think that what your contractor may be telling you to. So I would just try to get a level of pre-approval from Mass Save before expecting it.
Okay. So here's a question that has to do with the program that we're launching kind of beginning tonight with Green Energy Consumers and Abode. We've done two programs where limited time where people could join a buying group for heat pumps, and Lowy managed those. They went very well. But this year we're going to do it a little bit differently, which is we're going to have a number of contractors that people can get bids from, and we're hiring Abode to help answer questions that people might have about how to compare different bids for heat pumps. Lowy is wicked smart, but we're going to depend upon Abode for some technical advice. And Lowy's going to manage the whole game. But so the question would be, what if should somebody go to Abode before getting bids so they can get a design that says this is exactly what I want? Or should somebody get bids and then take them to Abode for $50 or $100 and get the good advice? Lowy or Mike or both? You want to answer that?
I'd say either way is fine. It really depends on your level of comfort with talking to the installers. If you feel like, boy, these installers are going to eat me alive, I don't understand the process, I don't even understand what my options are, I feel I need to be better prepared, then yes, Abode would be a great option and would really be able to talk you through your home and the options for your home. So then you go to the installers and say, this is kind of what I'm interested in. But you can also do it the other way, get your quotes, and then come back to Abode and say, one person wants to put in 3 compressors, the other person wants to put in 1 compressor and 3 heads. What's the difference between the two? Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, So there's certainly benefits with both. I would say that if all that you want to do with the project is get 3 quotes and pick one and move forward, then I would certainly be starting with reaching out to Abode. If you do have time in your life, you do like to meet with HVAC contractors, I actually prefer meeting with people when they at least have 1 quote or 2 quotes, just because it's like then like we're doing everything virtually and there's definitely some drawbacks of that, but at least like hearing like 1 quote or 2 quote, then I kind of have some like real world examples of like, oh, this type of equipment is only going to be heating your home to around 20 degrees. But if you did opt for, say, putting a HZ at the end of that particular model, now it's hyperheat. Now this is going to give you coverage down to -5 degrees. So it is sometimes helpful with going into the consultations that the customer may not be at a 101 level, at a 201 level, but there's other ways to get up to that, you know, having a more than a baseline knowledge of heat pumps other than meeting with HVAC contractors. So either or.
Yeah. Now, folks, a lot of questions are coming in, and we're going to try to address general questions. We just don't have the time to answer 150 home specific questions. And that's why we're trying to set up the program. So Loie, we're going to send out an email to people after this who registered, even if they didn't attend tonight, with the recording and with more material. And we'll answer more questions that were in the chat, but we're also going to have a landing page link, correct? Tell us about, we're going to set up a special page for anybody who wants to sign on to the program and then to be contacting either Loie or Abode. Can you tell us more about that? You're muted, Loie.
There's the URL, either info.greenenergyconsumers.org/abode or simply greenenergyconsumers.org/abode, and you'll be able to fill out a very short form. Basically, the only thing we need is your email, but as much of the other few questions as you can fill out, and that will allow us to get you the more detailed information as it becomes available to us as soon as the installer list is available, etc.
Yeah.
And there is a co-branded site on the Abode platform as well, and we'll be linking to that from this URL. Okay.
So the program's still in the early stages. It will evolve, but right now you can get information by that link that's shown right now. So again, general questions. Do the incentives apply to condos? And they do. You just have to work it out with your condo colleagues, correct?
Yeah, you would need to talk with the condo about where to locate the condenser outside. If it's not going to be on your private porch, say, if it's going to be somewhere in the yard, you'd need to work that out with your condo. And if there was any, whatever electrical, conduit stuff needed to be done on the outside, you'd need to talk with them about that. But yep, you could apply for that whole home incentive just for your condo itself.
One person asked an interesting question. Is the program we're doing with Abode similar to the program that we have with EnergySage, which we do with rooftop solar? And a few years ago, we started partnering with this company called EnergySage. And if you go to our website, you can click on it, learn about it, go to our website, look for the solar page. And what EnergySage does is they help you evaluate bids from up to 7 competing solar contractors. And it works really well. The customer satisfaction for that program is very high. People get a good price for the solar. Abode is, I don't know if Mike would put it this way. I think Abode is on the leading edge on heat pumps of trying to create the most objective and practical way for people to compare multiple bids and to get, really what's important here is Abode is not going to benefit whether you pick contractor X or Y. They're going to help you figure it out and give you the service that you need. So I would say they are comparable. Mike, would you say so?
Yeah, I think we're with EnergySage, in some ways they're very much a tech company that's doing solar, while I think we're a home performance or a building science company doing heat pumps. So I think at like our DNA, it is slightly different, but both of our hearts are in good places.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Let's see, another question would be, to get the whole house incentive that they're talking about, up to $10,000, do you have to absolutely disconnect the old system, the oil or gas system? And do you have
Yeah,
to put it on the front lawn?
Yeah, no. So there is a sign-off form that needs to get submitted, and there's a few check boxes, and you need to check one. So option number 1 is that it's been removed. Option number 2, that it's disconnected, and option number 3, that it's being left in place for only emergency use. The emergency use also does allow you to continue to use it for domestic hot water. So if you do have a tankless coil inside of your boiler, if you do have an indirect storage tank, you don't need to be junking that perfectly good, what some people believe, domestic hot water equipment to switch over to air source heat pumps. The other thing that's just not talked about, and I did see a little bit in the chat, is, well, what happens on a freezing cold day? So with the whole home heat pumps, freezing cold days, this signing off on this form means that the equipment is designed for freezing cold days. What none of the equipment is designed for is a polar vortex, is -15 degrees, -20 degrees for hours or days on end. So that for some people could provide a lot of peace of mind, knowing that they do have a traditional fossil fuel based system in the basement. But I am happy to have discussions about how to design for these extreme weather events that may not need you to be maintaining a $10,000 or a $15,000 boiler or furnace and thinking that you're always going to need to be replacing that every 15 or 30 years as well. Yeah.
Thanks. One person says in the chat, I'm scared of installers, that it's not fun and they're very expensive. And all I can say is, what we're trying to do here with Abode is Loie and Mike are going to try to tame the installers and give you the support you need. No one's forcing you to buy these heat pumps. We're trying to just present the best options for you, and go into this with your eyes wide open, do some research, and remember that you have Abode and Loie to help you out as you go. Let's see. One question was, do you have an idea, ballpark, the difference in cost between central air conditioning and a heat pump that provides both heat and air conditioning?
Yeah, and I can say this. So if you're going around, and it does depend on where you are in the state, but say if you're inside of the 495 belt, maybe you'll be able to find someone to replace the central AC with a new single stage central AC for $10,000. Like that still may exist somewhere in the Massachusetts marketplace from a full service shop. A sole proprietor who owns a pickup truck, who's doing this after his regular full-time job, maybe that could be coming in at $8,000. But traditionally, for say like a multi-stage central AC versus a cold climate heat pump, there's not a huge price disparity between those. I typically see both of those coming in, somewhere right around $15,000 kind of as a starting point. And then depending on, bells and whistles with how thick of a MERV filter you want, air purification, then those jobs can easily go up to $20,000, $25,000 for a single indoor unit or a single heat pump system ducted. So yeah, there's a lot of, there's certainly a lot to be considering with kind of cost, but I can say for my own home, and I didn't get a special deal, I have a 2,800 square foot home. My heat pump project cost $22,000. So it is real money, but do know that with that mass save incentive of $10,000, if I was eligible for it, if I waited a few months and did it, then my project would have cost $12,000. And good luck finding someone putting in a new gas-fired boiler, an oil-fired boiler inside the 495 belt for $12,000. So it can certainly be extremely comparable or more comparable than just putting in a new fossil fuel-based system.
And I want to reinforce there that the single expenditure on a heat pump provides the opportunity to replace potentially two pieces of equipment that could each be multi-$1,000s. So the fact that heat pump provides heating and cooling is a real big money saver if you do currently have central AC and a fossil fuel heating system.
Again, we have a ton of questions coming in. I'm going to just do the general questions. Mike can't be the house doctor for every individual person here. But here's a general question that's important. Could we just one more time clarify, if someone wants to sign up for the quote comparison, how does that clarify what that means versus the full design? If someone asked the question, said, if we get the design, do we then go out and shop that design, but need to get the quote comparison to sort out the vendors?
Yeah, the quote comparison is really helpful when you do have, say, three quotes, and you're just trying to figure out, like, how does this all ductless system compare to my other installer who's recommending ductless and ducted versus this other installer who's recommending dual fuel. So it can kind of really do an apples to oranges as far as, like, what is the cost per ton? What is kind of the range, like the acceptable range of like what my heat load is, and how does these three different heat pump systems line up? So it's just hard. So the tricky thing about heat pumps in Massachusetts is there's nothing on the proposal that says how the equipment's actually going to work. This is somewhat illuminating with showing, that, oh, this type of equipment is going to maintain 100% of its capacity, or, oh, this equipment is 200% oversized for what my home actually needs. So it's when you are just like, you want to do it, you don't know who you're wanting to work with, you don't know how the equipment's going to be performing. That's when a quote comparison could be really helpful. Do know that as far as the booking goes and like the scheduling, if you like sign up for just a general consultation and you have quotes, I'm more than happy to give you screen sharing power or set up a screen share. You email it to me, I pull up the screen share, then we dive into the submittals, and then we can also work through the proposals in person. So yeah, it's just for maybe like two different target audiences. I think, like, if you do like specs and data, just the quote comparison may be able to be what you're needing. But if you do really want to like talk through a somewhat major investment, at least in my mind, then I would opt more for the consultation.
And I got to tell you, folks, either one is a bargain. To think about spending several $1,000s to pay them $50 or $100 to get good advice, I think is pretty good. And the reason we're able to do that is because we have over 300 people registering for this event. It's all group purchasing power, and that's hopefully how it works. A couple of Mass Save questions. Will the Mass Save incentives to convert from oil to gas or from gas to high efficiency gas go away? I'll bet you that they will be gone in 3 years or less. They were almost extinguished this year, but I think that will come back and eventually they'll be gone. So if you are looking to upgrade your oil or gas system to a higher efficiency one, you ought to think about that, because the incentives won't be around forever for that, because the state is pretty committed to the transition to providing incentives to heat pumps. They're not saying you couldn't. There's no proposal that I'm aware that says that you won't be able to install gas or oil, replace your system with gas or oil, but you just may not get a Mass Save incentive after some date. And somebody said Mass Save audit was 3 years ago. Is that recent enough? Somebody answered, needs to be under 12 months. I think that's true. I think it probably doesn't need to be done within 12 months. How long do heat pumps and mini split systems last, Mike? How long, when would you have to replace one?
Yeah, there's some that are still out there that have the same design aesthetic as a wood paneled station wagon. So sometimes things last ages and ages, but as far as just, I think, like setting the right expectation, the same way that maybe you would plan on replacing your roof after 20 years, I would be thinking that 15 to 20 years is really the lifespan of the system. Most of the equipment, if it is going through like a certified installer, the warranty on outdoor equipment, indoor equipment is either 10 or 12 years, depending on the vendor. But yeah, I think 15 years is the safe expectation. And that's also the expectation that any plumber or HVAC person should be getting for a condensing boiler, condensing furnace, and on-demand hot water heater. So just the days of steel, cast iron, HVAC equipment that is last, 50 to 100 years, those days are behind us.
Yeah. Sally points out that we have people who are looking to make these heat pump installations probably will be able to look at Mass Save's heat loan program, where you can get zero interest financing, and where the Mass Save is partnering up with banks. Lots of banks will offer that heat loan.
Yes, and I'll note that even if you've received a heat loan in the past, the Mass Save incentives, the change in Mass Save this year reopens the possibility of getting a second heat loan if you're switching to heat pumps.
Right. Good questions. Someone asked, will the vendors, in order to get the Mass Save rebate, will the vendors will have to be, installers will have to be on the Mass Save list, correct?
In 2022, no, except if they're doing ducted equipment. So if there is, let's say that your plumber who you love, who's been maintaining your steam boiler for the last 20 years, and he's like, I see the times are changing, I want to do heat pumps. That professional is more than welcome to install your heat pump system. Going into 2023, Mass Save is going to have a list of contractors that you'll need to be working with that will have attended X, Y, and Z training. Right now, that the only training that needs to be attended is for the proper commissioning of ducted mini splits or centrally ducted heat pumps.
Okay.
And I'll add to that, you cannot buy your own equipment and install it yourself. It does have to be a licensed HVAC person who installs your system in order to qualify for the rebate.
Yeah. One question, does the system design consultation include tests for absence of insulation and other things, or should we get an audit before the system design consultation? And I think the answer is Abode will do an excellent job helping you figure out the heat pumps, but you'll need to get the assessment from a Mass Save vendor before that, right? Mike?
Yeah, yes, you got it. Yeah, all of the consultations are remote, and I don't have X-ray Zoom vision. So, yep. So take full advantage of the Mass Save program. Yeah, and if there's any hiccups with it, and you don't feel like that the person coming out was well represented, the company that I work for, our main kind of business line is oversee the auditors in the program. So I guess having a consultation could also involve making sure that you have a stellar energy audit experience.
Yeah. And let's see. I think we're getting close to the end. There's some discussion about not just insulation, but also getting air sealing, and that's true. That's the reducing leakages in the home. It's 8:30. I think that was a very fast-paced hour. I know we didn't answer all the questions, but we did our best given the time. Loie, fabulous. Thank you. Mike, thank you very much. And thank you for all the people who asked good questions. We will do our best to answer them in the coming days. There's going to be a lot on our website. You're going to learn a lot by going to Abode's website as well. And look for the email from us.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
And
you all.
we'll be posting this to our YouTube site as well as sending you the link. Thanks so much for being here.